with you today. Just 1 second. Can you see the agenda now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you have received the agenda and we will follow the agenda. There will be, I'm really glad to inform you because Riccardo just informed you before the meeting that University of Torino will talk today about City Labs and provide some updated information on them and discuss them with you. So obviously University of Torino can take the floor for the whole time they need it. We will now start with Riccardo giving us some updates on the role of CEIPSA. We will then discuss a few issues on the ethics logbook and some questions I still have for some case studies on issues that have not been resolved yet. Then the coordinator and University of Torino will provide some updates on the City Labs. And in the end, if we still have time, we will start touching the training on the ethics issues that we have not discussed yet. I'm not sure we will be able to talk about all the topics today. In case it's not possible, we will postpone some of them to the next meeting. So I now give the floor to Riccardo for the updates on the role of CEIPSA. Thank you.
So very briefly, one of the pending issues that arose from the second ethics check was about the role of our own ethics committee at the Rovira Virgili University. The point was that in their approval, they conditioned the approval of the research to obtaining the certificate from the local committee in each of your institution. And this led to a misinterpretation of the role as a super ethical body of the project that CEIPSA refuses to play because they are not entitled to enter into the specifics of your local's procedures of approval. So we had a meeting with them, and we decided that they will play a role of external advisor of the smartest ethical committee. So they basically will receive your local ethical approvals without pronouncing any statement about their validity. But the main point is here on timing, I guess, because in principle, we are supposed to start over the project by mid-June. And the restarting of the project is conditioned to the submission of all final ethical approvals, okay? So the point is that we'll be able to receive this ethical document by this date. And one of the points of the meeting of today is to understand a little bit where you are with regards to the City Lab research design, and if you expect to be able to have these certificates before the restarting of the project or not. So
can you repeat the schedule, Riccardo?
In principle, we will restart the project around middle June.
So by mid-June, we're supposed to have the
final approval, yeah. If we will not have it, we cannot restart the project. So this could imply that the suspension will last longer, okay? But yeah, just discuss a bit on the timing that each one of us is managing, and let's see. Guido.
Can I ask one brief question indeed, and maybe we address it later? This data protection officer, I have an issue over there, but is that part of the agenda later on, or otherwise I can ask it right now?
As you prefer. We will discuss about it later.
Then it's okay. That's okay.
Perfect.
So possibly I would suggest to start with the City Lab issue, if it's okay with you, Anna Maria.
Of course, no problem.
Let's have a round, maybe coordinated by Erika. I don't know if you have something to introduce, Erika, about the survey and so forth.
Yeah, good afternoon. Well, I don't have a presentation, but the fact is that you received the survey we sent during the week by Monica. But as you can understand, now we need to have as soon as possible an overall idea of the methodology you are planning to use, and also connected with the ethics and with the deadline we have with the ethics. We need to understand some specific issue that you plan to develop, some specific approaches that you are planning to apply in regard the stakeholders particularly. So the kind of participant you are planning to involve, the techniques of engagement, and the other important things that it's really necessary to have as soon as possible is regard the forms and the way you plan to use for ensure the protection of rights, inclusion of differences, of different voices of participants. So these are the specific issues that maybe we can start to discuss today, having around all together. And of course, we are waiting for your answers to the survey. There will be the possibility that we will contact maybe personally some of you if we lack some information, because as soon as you send us the survey complete, we will try to draft a framework, a general framework, to put all the information together, synthesize, and make a methodological framework in order to send it to you and make you able to start working and ask for the ethics approval. So this is the point I think we can try to discuss about these issues now.
Thanks a lot, Erika, for this update. A couple of input to inform this discussion. I would say that the main point is to understand whether or not, in your case, in your City Lab, there will be major differences in terms of ethics requirement compared to Work Package 3. I mean, if you are involved in the same research participants with more or less the same techniques, there might be no relevant issues, and you just have to formalize the approval with your ethical committee. So one question would be, is there any significant difference with regards with what you have done in Work Package 3? And the other point is that the timing. I mean, according to your knowledge about the functioning of your local institution, would you imagine yourself to be able to prepare all the relevant documentation to be submitted to the ethical committee and receive an approval by, let's say, ideally mid-June or earlier? So let's have these two questions as an input for the discussion. If you want, I can start for the case study of Barcelona, for instance. I mean, in our specific case, we do not see any particular difference compared to Work Package 3. We will involve the same research participants, which are stakeholders who are data producers within the open data ecosystem of the city of Barcelona. We will involve representatives of vulnerable communities which are vulnerable to housing issues and labor precarity. And then we will involve also public institutions to develop evidence-based intervention to solve problem related to what we are calling tourism-led gentrification in Barcelona. But in general, these three profiles are the same that we have involved already in the qualitative data collection. And as for the methodologies in the City Lab, there will be a moderator that will help us to coordinate the different sessions. So we will create a mixed team, including researchers from the Rovira e Virgili University and this professional moderator. And we will implement co-design session, which will be all structured around groups of discussions, mapping exercise, scenario buildings, and so forth. But in principle, I guess that we can reuse 90% of the informed consent that we have used in work package 3. So in our case, I don't see any content related problem. The problem that I can see is about timing, because from now to mid-June, our ethical committee will have just 2 meetings, one at mid-April, one at mid-May, and the other one in mid-June. We could be able to receive approval for our own City Lab, but if then they need to access information from all the different case studies before issuing the final approval, this might be an issue in terms of timing. So that's the summary for Barcelona.
Shall I talk about Amsterdam now then? I already designed informed consent forms and let them approved by the ethical committee for the City Labs before, because I was already expecting what we would do. So I don't expect issues over there. We are working with the same kind of stakeholders as what we did in the work package 3. However, there is one thing, and I like your opinion on that or your help on that. We are still discussing it within the team in Amsterdam, but I'm genuinely, personally, a fan to include students here as well. And because you need some creative power to come up with alternative kind of scenarios for the futures, future literacy, you need people who have some time and can make stuff and show stuff. And I would really love it if we can have students in this. But I'm a little bit uncertain, next to the practicalities we have in Amsterdam, about the ethical issues, and as well as power relations and stuff like that with students. So I'm a little bit uncertain about whether this is a good approach or not. I would love to do it, but I'm a little bit uncertain. That's in Amsterdam.
Yes, if I may, concerning students, Guido, well, I think that the idea of involving them from the point of view, let's say, of their creative approach is would be an excellent idea. Concerning your, let's say, doubts about the ethical implication of involving students, the most important thing is that students should not feel, let's say, obliged to take part in the City Lab. And it should be made clear to them that there is not, I mean, there are no consequences on them and on their, let's say, career, student career, depending on their willingness to participate in the City Lab or not to participate. I mean, these must be independent from their career path, study path, because obviously, I mean, if there would be such a, I mean, kind of a constraint on them, obviously there would be ethics implications, because they would feel obliged, they would fear that there can be implications on their exams, on their degree awards, and so on. So it must be made clear that the two plans are separate and they do not interfere with each other.
Would that imply, Anna, just to make it very practical,
Yes.
because we have Urban Leisure and Tourism Lab, which is hosting the City Lab, and in the Urban Leisure and Tourism Lab we have 40, 50 students working. We could, that's scenario one, ask student teams to work for half a year on working out on these, but that's part of their study, so they're not graduating, but they're assessed for it. They get good grades or not good grades, stuff like that. That's part of the study. But if we ask that voluntarily, do you like to work on this assignment or not, then I would be on the safe side. Is that correct? This is option one.
Yes.
And option two is we just ask the students who are there, guys, we have a City Labs meetings coming soon. We need some people who will like to work on it. Don't feel anything, but if you like to participate, it's your own city, please do. That would always be okay.
Yes, of course. From my point of view, option two would be even better.
Yeah, I thought so. I was hoping for option one. I thought option two is the safe one.
Option two, yes, is the safe one. But I think that option one is also feasible, but you have to explain clearly that it's something that they decide to do.
But they have to choose it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand that. Normally we would not do that. We just put it down there as a challenge, and students have to do it. But what I understand from you is to be okay on this one with SmartDesk. We have to say this is a challenge you can do. You can opt for it. It's voluntary.
Exactly. You can also opt out if you don't like.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, I think.
And obviously, Guido, if you like, once you have, let's say, this kind of, information you provide to students, I would be glad to have a look at them if I can be of any help.
Okay. And,
just a couple of things on what Guido said. The first is, I mean, just to confirm that these students are all aged over 18.
They are, don't worry. Yes, they are.
Yes.
And the other thing is that today I've been going through the second ethics check from the ethics panel, and I read about the Amsterdam previous approval, that they consider that it lacks of details on the techniques that you are using and the methodological procedures. So I would suggest that the new version of this approval mention explicitly the word the City Lab and so forth, so we can be sure that the ethics panel will accept it.
Okay, I understand. Then there's Ricardo, just one question, because I learned the hard way together with all of us that possibly what I'm going to do then may be problematic in a way, because what I will do is I name more methods than we actually will do, so that in order to be able to move around a little bit, like, oh, this is not working, let's do something else, I can move around because it's within the methods that I supply. But at the same time, I'm not going to use all the methods that I will mention.
No, let's try to focus on just on what we really need, and possibly one way around is to say, look, we are going to do City Labs, which means which implies the use of different co-creation approaches within the general framework of a group of discussions and simple stuff.
Okay. Keep it open. That's what you're saying.
But Yeah, I
If
mean,
I s-
avoid to list things that you're not going to do, because if not, we will be asked why you didn't do it. Why? I mean, let's stick to what is stated in the grant agreement first, and avoid including mention to things that we do not really need to address in these approvals. I mean, if you have a clear idea about 10 techniques that you are using, include them all. But if you're not sure, avoid to do it.
No, but that's what it is. I have, it's not like 10, I have 6 possible ideas, and we will use 3 of them in the end. I'm pretty sure, but but it's a set of methods, that convivial tools that we will use, and I can name them. That's okay. So I understand.
Yeah, to the eyes of the ethics panel committee of the European Commission, the point is really about whether the inclusion of new techniques would lead to vulnerability of participants. If not, that's fine. I mean, you can do more.
I understand. I don't think we're going to have issues over there. So one of the main interests I'm personally, as a researcher, are interested in is to develop these methods, to improve these methods, because what I'm starting to see in Amsterdam is that we need methods that enable to have participatory co-design sessions when people are not at the same time, at the same place, in the same workshops, because that's what we see all the time. People cannot make it at the right time. So we're always limited with few people, and you need more people, but they can't show up. So I'm really thinking and trying to study what we can do so that we have prolonged period of time, so that many stakeholders can contribute to one and the same thing, even when they're not meeting each other live at the same moment in time. But that's...
Are you going to do the City Lab online, hybrid, face-to-face? Or what's the plan?
It's face-to-face. It's going to be in the lab, face-to-face. But it's just, Ricardo, something that we learned the hard way is that either you make it very short, and then you get, for instance, people from the municipality in because they have only 2 hours. And then we have to plan it now already for December, and then they have 2 hours. But in 2 hours, you can hardly accomplish anything. And that's the research question I'm looking at, is what can we develop on methods so that they can add their expertise and participate for a prolonged time, even when they have limited time. But that's typically for us.
Okay. Okay, unless you have any other point, I would say that Amit maybe can explain a bit, because I understand that you might need to move earlier.
Yeah. We basically need to submit a new ethics approval because we changed university. I don't think we use any problematic method, so I don't foresee any issue with ethics committee. I can't say about the time. I don't have experience with the ethical committee of the university in terms of time, but it does mean that we need to submit ethical approval, the application, in half a month, like by mid-May, to get a chance to have it back by mid-June, I guess. It's probably possible because we can understand in general terms what are the methods, which is more or less like kind of I would say meeting, focus group of co-creation sessions, this idea, interviews, maybe some walk along style interview, because you walk with participants and see the city, and so I don't think any of these methods are problematic in this sense, and they pretty much rely on the previous things we did, but again, it's a different committee, so we can start everything from the beginning. So my biggest concern is that we will be able to submit it by mid-May. I think if we can make it, that this should be fine.
May I ask who are the participants that you are thinking about for your City Lab?
We are working in a neighborhood. It's a village. Actually, it's a neighborhood. It's already within Jerusalem, and these are, you could say, this vulnerable population. Our minority. So in this term, it's like kind of vulnerable population, maybe. Probably with the lower socioeconomic, but not necessarily poor. but maybe a bit lower than average. So in this sense, they could be categorized as vulnerable populations. So basically, we work in one neighborhood / village in Jerusalem.
Okay, so but maybe in your case, remembering also the position of one of the reviewers during the first check, try to explain in which way you could prevent stigmatization of Arab minorities, because they seem to be particularly sensitive to this point from the Commission. So just, I mean, explicit measures that you will be implementing to reduce their stigmatization, which are the usual one that we have already conceived in the previous version of the deliverables. Okay. So yeah, timing it's the key. I mean, in our case, it's more or less the same. If we are able to close the design, which seems the case by mid-May, there is sufficient time to have the final approval by mid-June. I mean, 1 month, I think it's the minimum to be able to meet the goal.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I go for
Thanks,
Lisbon.
Franz.
Okay, so we have been having several meetings with the Lisbon municipality, and they actually had a plan to establish a city lab for the whole city. And when we got to them and said that we also had this idea, they said, okay, so maybe let's do a pilot city lab, focused first on the neighborhood that we are studying, and then maybe later in the future this could be expanded to the whole city. So we've been negotiating with them like these specific objectives of the city lab, and we have a last like organizational meeting with them that is scheduled for May 10th. So by then we'll have a final list of stakeholders that we want to invite, the techniques that we want to use, and then we can draft the ethics approval documents. But there is and I mean the stakeholders are pretty much the same ones that we worked with during the work package 3 tasks, but there is a degree of unpredictability with City Lab because it's participatory. We cannot anticipate all the decisions and all the techniques. I mean, if participants in a City Lab decide collectively that the next step implies the use of another research technique that was not foreseen in the beginning, how do we go about this? So that's one question. And another one is that a suggestion that we made to the municipality was that we really want to obtain some kind of information that is not available anywhere in Portugal, and that can be done, we thought, in a way that, for instance, the local administration, the neighborhood administration, could deliver to everyone in the neighborhood, so in the post boxes, like an invitation, like a card with an invitation with a QR code, so that everyone who's at that moment in the neighborhood, so either short-term residents or long-term residents, could reply to a survey. So this is not 100% sure yet, so we don't know if the municipality want to do this and if they have the means to do this. But I just wanted to know if we do decide to do this, should we also include the list of questions for ethics approval? Because this is supposed to be answered by anyone who gets the QR code, and is I mean, of course you can say like you need to be at least 18 years old or something like that, but so this is yeah, it's one of the activities that we, because we would like to discuss some of these results at the City Lab, you know. So I don't know how detailed the ethics approval has to be to include this list of questions. That will be the first step, and then the actual participatory methods that we'll use in the City Lab meetings.
I will give my inputs, and maybe then Anna Maria could help us to understand better each one of these situations. Starting from the last one, I would say that if you can be specific, at least on the topic of this research activity, and a general overview of with some example of questions, it would be appreciated. But in any case, I will ask your local committee to give you an opinion about how to proceed, because at the end, they have to approve your methodology. So ask them what they think about it and find out which is the best solution. In any case, if you plan to use it, you have to include it in the request for the approval. As for the second point, I mean, I will, since we have to, I mean, produce also a methodological document for the Commission regarding the City Labs, we can include your argument. I mean, City Labs are iterative processes, so they may change while they are ongoing. Okay, in that case, I would suggest this way of proceeding. If during the implementation of the City Lab, new techniques arise as relevant, you should consult with the advisor of the project. So in Anna Maria and the SEIPSA and other people that could play this role of advisor. If they consider that you need to update your approval, you will go through a new process. If not, you go on and you just explain at the end of the whole process what you have done and why you have done it. That's my point. And then one last thing is about the infamous census, commercial census in Lisbon. We should really try to find a way out. What Anna Maria suggested a few meetings ago is to simply explain in detail what is the census about. There is no risk to disclose personal information and so forth. And I mean, include again a mention to this census in the new approval, so that you have a second approval from your committee on that, and we should be fine. I don't know if Anna Maria want to add something on all this.
Thank you, Riccardo. I mean, I tend to agree with what you said. For me, it's fine. I mean, the main advice I would give to Lisbon, but in general to all case studies, is try and be as transparent as possible with your ethics committee, and also detailed, meaning that, I mean, they are not expert of the methodology you want to implement. So give them the power to understand what you want to do and to assess if there are any specific ethics issues that should be considered. I mean, on the basis of what I've seen so far in your project, the main ethics issues concern the privacy and data protection on one side, and on the other side, the risk of involvement of vulnerable people, and as a consequence of stigmatization of these people. So make sure that when you design this methodology and explain them to your ethics committees, you also talk about these issues and make sure that the research protocols take these issues into consideration. And as a last thing, I would like to add, considering that, as you rightly said, the city labs could evolve during the implementation. Okay, but I mean, you should inform the ethics committee also of this possibility, so that they understand that they will approve something that is not put on stone, let's say. There could be changes, and then these changes will be assessed if it's needed, again by them, if there are significant issues.
I have so just to get back to what you both said. So I think regarding the commercial census, I think I've provided some more explanation in the logbook that Ana Maria asked us.
And that's great.
Okay. I just wanted to know if that's sufficient or if we need to write more on.
I think, I mean, from my point of view, it's is sufficient. We discussed in general with Riccardo before the meeting. The idea is that we will draft together a revised ethics procurement plan to be sent to the REA, so that we take into account all issues that have been let's say arise by the second ethics check. So there is always, obviously, also the commercial census. So our idea would be that we draft this revised procurement plan and we add further details on the basis of what you sent us.
Okay.
At that point, if we think that something else should be added, we will ask you. But as a first, let's say, starting point, we will do it on the basis of the information that I've collected over the last month, thanks to your contribution.
Okay, but the suggestion that Ricardo made about touching upon the topic of the commercial census in the next ethics approval, so the one for the city lab, and then including the, I don't know if I don't even know if the ethics, our local ethics committee will reassess something that they have already assessed, and also like based on something that has already been done. I don't think it's,
you know, exactly. I would say that it could also cause a bit of confusion, because I mean, as soon as I mean, once you explain, and as you already did in the logbook, what the commercial census was about, the fact that there are no data protection issues, there are no risk of stigmatization, and so on. I think that at that point, for the ethics experts of REA, that will be enough, and they won't ask you know, an explicit approval of what you have done, because in any case, it's something that has already been done. So it would be a bit, I would say, strange, in my opinion, to include it now in the ethics approval for City Lab.
But shouldn't the, sorry, Franz, shouldn't the, in this case, the local committee in Lisbon position against this opinion from the ethics panel? Because I mean, in the report is written that the commercial census should be avoided or something like that. I mean, considering this strong position against the commercial census, shouldn't we ask the local committee in Lisbon to say, look, we have double-checked it again, all, and it's fine in our views, because I mean there is no risk of any kind of stigmatization and so forth. And I don't know, to provide a more stronger answer. I mean,
I see what you mean, Riccardo, but at that point I wouldn't link it in the request for ethics approval. So I would keep them separate.
Okay.
So it could be good if the ethics committee wants to, I mean, on the basis of the explanation that Franz also gave to us, etc., it could be good if they approve it now and they say that, yes, in the end, they were okay, they agreed with what has been done. But I wouldn't link it in the same request for City Labs, because in the end, they are different.
Okay, we can do this. We can file two things at the ethics committee. So one, an explanation about the commercial census, and then the City Lab. Just one thing about the consent forms for the City Lab. I was wondering if I mean, it's a collective discussion, so we have all kinds of people together. We could maybe, once everyone is there, we can share like a slideshow with all the ethics information, and then circulate around like a list of signatures. So people just like, instead of having one page, you know, per person, like we have just a collective agreement that everyone is in line with with what's going to happen and the kinds of information that are going to be recorded, and or we need to have individual files for each participant.
In the City Lab, you mean?
In the City Lab, yeah.
For me, front now is a bit difficult to answer because I haven't seen, you know, and let's say the protocol of the methodology that you plan to do.
Okay.
Then I will be able to, I mean, if you send it to me, I will then be able to give you a proper answer.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. In general, I would say that, I mean, if you want to go, let's say, for a general approval, I mean, there should be kind of justified why you think that an individual approval is not needed. But as I said, I prefer first to look at what you plan to do, and then, I mean, and understand better, and then give you a proper answer.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question or topic as well, but I'm not sure if I'm now in the right position to ask it, or that we first go to another case study city right now.
I think you can go, Guido, and then we proceed with the others.
Okay. You mentioned two main issues, and I have no worries about that. I have another serious concern specific for the in Holland University situation. And that is that, for instance, the team is very small. Let me put it like that. So you're talking about the data protection officer.
Yes, I know.
Which is me. We have a project lead, which is me. We have a ethics committee, of which the main person who is involved over there is Rina Smink, who will run the City Labs later on. So it seems that we have these different roles. Mm-hmm. And we do have these different roles, but effectively it are just two persons.
Yes.
And I'm a little bit, you're talking about transparency. That doesn't feel very ethical in a way to me. It's that, and I don't know what I can do about it. So that's a little bit my concern right now. If I'm a very critical reviewer, I would say there's something wrong over there. Too little people with too many roles.
Well, for me, the point is that I fully understand what you mean. But the point, I think that the problem in this case is also that this was not, let's say, clear. For example, you told me when you filled the logbook, you told me that you are the data protection officer of Holland University. Okay, then
for this project, because we don't have a data protection officer as a formal role within the university. So we discussed this at the beginning of SmartDesk. Then everybody at IT department said, well, we can't do that. We're uncertain about that. And then in the end, we decided, well, then Guido does it himself. I'm trying to do it as good as I am, but
sorry, but why the university itself doesn't have a DPO? Isn't compulsory? Because, for example, now in Italy, it is compulsory following the regulation, the general data protection regulation.
Interesting question. Thank you. I don't know about that, so I can ask again, because this was 1.5 years ago that we, or 2 years ago when we had this discussion. So maybe by now we have one, but I'm pretty sure we don't. But if it is compulsory, we got a major issue here, bigger than SmartDesk.
Yeah, I mean, I suggested, Guido, that you check a bit, that you check how the situation is, because I mean, usually it is compulsory for universities to have a DPO. If it's not following the GDPR, if it's not the case, I mean, there should be a kind of a justification why there isn't.
2 years ago, what we said, we kind of outsource it as a university. In the Netherlands, there is this generic organization which is called SURF, and they have this dedicated servers and stuff. And if you use their services, everything is taken care of. The servers are in Europe, the data is protected. You have to get a lot of access rules and stuff like that in order to comply with that. That's how I organized it, in order to make sure that we have data protection, but there's not a data protection officer as such. You understand?
But who, when you said that this is outsourced, okay, but then who checks this system, let's say?
This outsourced system, who's responsible for that?
Yes.
That's an organization in the Netherlands which is in between all the universities. So
okay,
I can check
then Guido, if you send me this information by email, I mean, I will understand better, and then we will see how to explain this to the Commission. Because I mean, if this is an organization at, let's say, national level, because it concerns all universities, then it could be perfectly fine. But I think that this should be explained.
Yeah, but thank you. And now I understand better what you mean with being transparent. Yeah. I'm going to try to find out, including what I don't know. Okay. So if I'm unsure, I will do that. Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.
In any case, I would suggest not to present yourself as the DPO in Holland.
Yes.
No, exactly.
So you may play a role informally as a DPO, but not present yourself as such.
I fully agree, Riccardo. Also because in the end, I understand that the check that the data protection rules and rights are implemented is not done by Guido in the end. It's done by this organization that he mentioned. So it's not the DPO.
I have to check, because it sounds a bit like we, as very often in the Netherlands, distributed it among different organizations and people. And so when you say who is in the end responsible, for me, that's very hard to answer that, apart from me being the project lead for SmartDesk, but I don't know exactly for in Holland.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the ethics committee as well.
Okay,
in any
yes,
case, I guess that the ethics committee in Holland, when issue a certificate, is also considering data protection issues.
Yeah.
So maybe they do not have a specific role, but they do check DPO related issues.
Yes.
You know, we just to give you a feel, and then we go to another case study. The very reason why in Holland has an ethics committee is because I asked for it due to SmartDesk. We didn't have it.
That's very strange.
Yeah, I know, but it is just what you need to understand a bit is we are a University of Applied Sciences, so we didn't have all these kind of issues until recently, and now we're growing, and especially the group where Vina and I are in are growing rapidly and doing larger projects like SmartDesk. So suddenly we have an ethics committee and stuff like that. But that's you're talking from the perspective of your universities, where you have many professors and research that are needing ethical approval and stuff like that. We have it a little bit less. But that's just to give some context.
Okay. So we proceed now with another case study, Riccardo.
Yes. No, actually, we do not need to do it because Milan is not here anymore, so we do not have any. Possibly he will, Andrea will join afterwards, and Turin and Venice do not need an approval for the City Labs. Lucky of them.
Yeah, if I may, I just want to add the question because France before mentioned the survey they are planning to do, and came to my mind a questionnaire that we had mainly in the framework of my PhD thesis, but finally some information could be useful for us in order to set also the City Lab work. This was a questionnaire we had we sent to all students of the university, both the two University of Turin, Polytechnic University and the University of Turin, and students were free to answer, of course. We asked some information, not personal information, so it's not possible to understand who is the student that responds, but we asked, for example, for gender or age, stuff like that. And also some final question about a situation in which the student has felt like excluded by housing market or stuff like that. So very general, but also some sensitive information are in there, even if you can't understand who's the respondent. So my question is, can we in some ways use these informations, these data we collect also for smart tests? Should we specify in some ways how we come to that information? I don't know, how can we handle, or it's better to not to, because actually we already made the survey, so it's something that we already done. And we didn't mention, as far as I know, this with the ethics committee so far.
In my opinion, as far as the analysis of data is based on anonymized information, you can use this data, provided that the sensitive information that you are asking is proportionate to the objective of the research, let's say. So you can collect sensitive data, but then you isolate the identity of the participant with this information, and that's fine. The doubt that I have is whether or not this survey was part of the research design in Turin and the grant agreement. Because in any case that we have mentioned techniques that were not included in the grant agreement, we had some sort of issue with the reviewers saying where this technique is coming from and why do you need it and so forth.
Okay, I should check, because I'm sure we mentioned this survey in one of the last report of the WP3, but I have to check this. Yeah, thank you.
I think, Anna Maria, is that we can move on to another topic of the agenda, right, unless someone among you need discussing further some issue on the City Labs. Apparently not.
Okay, then we go on with some issues I would like to discuss with you. I would like to provide some updates on the ethics logbook and ask some questions. Okay, the first one concerns the data protection officer opinion. So we already discussed it with Amsterdam, but when we filled the logbook, we discussed it also with other cases, such as, for example, Jerusalem. So in this case, depending on the procedure that is applied in your institution, you should provide a proof that the person in charge of data protection issues in your institution, so what I would call the data protection officer, has been informed about the project, your role, and the methodologies you plan to implement, and that he or she has expressed a favorable opinion about the data collection and management. Copies of data protection officer opinions were available if there is a formal document, must be enclosed to deliverable 6.4. I've also put comments in the ethics logbook, for example, concerning Edinburgh case. If you remember, at the last ethics meeting, Kendra explained how the procedure for, let's say, DPO opinion is implemented at institutional level. I asked her to explain in a few lines the procedure and to provide, kind of confirmation of the fact that this person has been adequately informed about the project and the data protection issues. You find the comments in the ethics logbook, and I've tried to assign the, let's say, the question directly to you so that you can answer. I don't know if Amit is still with us, but
I'm here.
Okay, great. You told me that probably you still had something from the beginning of the project, right?
Well, first of all, at the beginning I was in Tel Aviv, so now I don't have connection.
Sorry, yes.
So I don't have connection with Tel Aviv now, so I don't know what. But we did approach the DPO in Tel Aviv.
Yes.
And I think I wrote you, but again I don't remember because something kind of laconic answer that we got. We wrote them about the project, what it's going to include, and she or he wasn't in the DPO, it was the assistant of the DPO. And okay. I don't remember, he didn't tell us that we don't need, but I don't remember the exact what the thing that they said, but somehow it kind of, I wrote you because I looked again on our correspondence then, and I don't remember the exact answer, but it was something laconic answer that we kind of don't need, or I'm not sure exactly. I just don't say things.
Okay.
I don't remember.
But if I remember correctly, you told me that you had to check something. If you had this, kind of reply from the person. I
will need to check it again, but yeah, it was like, we got like 2 lines from the DPO assistant, something like that. And again, I don't remember, it was really a long time ago. But the thing is that now we need to apply and to contact the DPO in Jerusalem. So it will be, again, something that we'll need to get. We did have a DPO, but I think it just replaced months ago. So I'll need to check again.
Okay, so Riccardo, concerning the Tel Aviv case, when it was the Tel Aviv, I think in the ethics procurement plan, in the revised version, we have to explain what Amit has just told us. So the fact that they received a reply from the assistant to the DPO saying that there were no issues to, let's say, ask for an explicit approval, if I understood correctly. And if you could get back to that email, I think it would be very good.
I'll check again. We didn't. I don't think it was like explicit approval, but we kind of get. What do you want from us? What they said. What do you want from us? Something like that. I need to check it again. The exact format, because I was also when you contacted me, I had to look back and look at it. So, or maybe I check just my response to you. Maybe it will be faster.
Okay. Thank you.
Do it now.
Since we are talking about this point, I mean, I have a concern about Jerusalem, because when the project will start over,
Mhm.
Jerusalem will be still not part of the consortium, because we will need to ask an amendment of the grant agreement, and this cannot be done within the suspension period. So it kind of hard to me to understand how to address this issue in the new version of the ethics documents. So saying that, I mean, in the future, there will be a new partner in the project, that is Jerusalem, that is providing us with an approval for the ethics in the city labs. So it's unclear to me how to address this point.
I can be very wrong, but in my opinion, it's not a big problem, because the ethical approval just gives you an ethical approval, which is in standard, which comply with all the regulations. So we get an ethical approval, and you know what I mean? I mean, you don't need to be in a European project in order to get ethical approval that is complied with the European Commission. That's in my perspective.
Yeah, no, I mean, the point is that you have, for the Israel case study, we have presented a first approval from Tel Aviv, and we will present a second one from Jerusalem. So I have to explain this inconsistency in the document, and I cannot support this argument with the fact that Jerusalem is part of the consortium. But maybe Max
Ricardo,
should...
yes, sorry, Ricardo. I think it shouldn't be a problem, meaning we have already asked to Amit to collect 2 commitment letters, one from Jerusalem and one from Tel Aviv University, to confirm the interest in this new entry and the repartition of the budget. This letter will be submitted to the officer before the reactivation of the project, and in principle, the process to include the new partner should be previous to the reactivation of the project.
Okay, cool.
In
Fantastic.
principle.
Mhm.
The point is that we don't get any answer from the officer.
I
it's-
send you, okay, we send you our letter, right? It's not related to the ethics now, but.
No,
So what
but
I will do is... Sorry,
no,
Max.
Amit, I didn't get your letters.
We sent a letter from Jerusalem,
I will check it.
long time ago. I mean, 2 weeks ago, 3.
I will check it.
So in the
But we
document, I
need-
will just...
Sorry. We need anyway 2 letters, one from Jerusalem.
So you
And,
found one from Tau. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I will pretend that Jerusalem is already there and functioning in the new version of the deliverables. And just to ask to France, we cannot include the commercial census to the amendment because it's retroactive, so it's not possible.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter, we will solve the problem of the commercial census, something that, I mean, we make it.
Okay, we can proceed, Ricardo. Can you hear me?
Yes,
No.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Then I still have a question concerning the Milan study case, because I think, I don't know if Andrea is with us now.
No, it's coming back in 20 minutes, it will be back. So it's better to move this point later on.
Okay. In any case, I just want to say that since the second ethics check raised several issues concerning the Milan study case when they had thought to use Twitter, and now it has been decided that Twitter won't be used, I think that the declaration to REA that I had already asked to Andrea to draft, in this case will be included in the revised ethics procurement plan that we will draft with Ricardo. But this is a very important issue because it has been one of the main criticisms of the ethics experts, the use of Twitter. So it must be made clear that the plan has changed and it hasn't been, in the end, it hasn't been used. Then the ethics check also asks to make sure that the the Excel table that you provided before the second ethics check, so to make sure that this ethics Excel table, is consistent with the full set of documents that you have provided, in particular from the ethics point of view. So here I need the help, especially from the coordinator. So what are the inconsistencies the ethics check refers to? Because I think they refer to the issue of profiling, because they thought that there was some profiling in the study, in the project, because at least the Venice ethics approval mentioned also profiling, but in the end there is no profiling, so we will explain it clearly in the revised ethics procurement plan. There is the issue of minors, and in this case it was, let's say, it was referred mainly to the involvement of students, and the partners who have used the students or plan to use students have already confirmed that the students are not minors, and there was the issue of the possible involvement of minors in the case of the Twitter study, let's say the Milan study. But at this point, we do not, there is not the Twitter study anymore. So I cannot see any further inconsistencies, but I would need the help of the coordinator to tell me if there are other issues, other inconsistencies that should be better explained. I don't know, Riccardo, if you want to add something now, or we discuss it.
No, just saying that as far as I understand this point, once we have all the methodological design closed, we will double check what we said in the grant agreement and see whether or not there is still pending inconsistencies. But my impression is that if we have all closed, there will be no problem to address this point.
Okay, and please, Riccardo, check again the Excel table that you provided before the second ethics check. To make sure that everything is clear there and there is no risk of misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Regarding to this point, we will need to do an effort, because we said a few things in the previous review of the ethics document, which has not been done as promised, because of several things, included the fact that the project entered into a suspension period, which was not foresaw. So, we should, reconsidering a few arguments to explain why we didn't do what we said.
Okay, so I think that my suggestion would be that we add an updated version of this table to the revised ethics procurement plan.
Okay, no problem.
So that there are no misunderstandings. And this is the updated and real version of what has been done.
Okay.
Then there was also the request on the clarification on the process of and standardization of documents submitted to the local ethics committee, and this is important also for the city labs. Indeed, here I want to highlight the fact that City Labs informed consent documents must include all relevant details. So basically what has already been done for the previous work package, meaning that these informed consent documents must include details of the methodology, any associated risk, including risk of stigmatization, mitigation of stigmatization, and so on. So this is also, I would say, linked to what I said before when I replied to Lisbon. So try and give as many details as possible to the ethics committee in terms of research protocol and also of informed consent documents where they are indeed developed. We already said concerning the City Labs that several case studies must provide the protocols, informed consent documents and ethics approvals, but we already discussed that. All these documents and all informed consent documents also for City Labs must be attached to the revised version of deliverable 6.1. where, for example, the previous informed consent documents have already been included. I suggest, since this deliverable has not been approved yet, I suggest, Riccardo, that a revised version is done, and these new documents are also included there.
Can I ask
Yeah.
one small question?
Yeah, in general, yes, they should be. I mean, as for the global code of conduct for researchers, I mean, I read this test.
Yes, I will talk about it later. Sorry, but please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I didn't see its relevance for the SmartDesk project, so I didn't include it on purpose because but I mean, if we need to do it, we will include it.
Yeah, but I think here, Riccardo, the point is more on the fact that when there are, you know, for example, interviews or relations with the research participants and so on, the values of this code of conduct are simply, you know, taken into account, because if you look at them, and then I've also put the link to this document, it's a very short document, and the values that it suggests are, I mean, general, and meaning that they are honesty, transparency, care, respect. I mean, and in the end, if the research is an ethical research, you apply these values. So I think that in general is something that it has already been implemented in the project.
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean, we follow the rules established by normative EU documents. In that case, I have avoided a mention to it because we do not really work in poor setting in our project, but still, I mean, we can include it.
Yes, I think that, I mean, we will see how to put it. I think that it was mentioned because, you know, of the involvement of vulnerable people. And we will simply have to explain that the rights of these vulnerable people and the risk of discrimination of these people have been taken into account. And I don't think that we should, I mean, worry about further things.
Okay, no problem.
I think Guido wanted to add something.
Yeah, I think I have the same question actually in a way as Riccardo, but I'm not sure. But the second bullet, you say the City Labs informed consent documents should include all relevant details, like details of the methodology, etc. I already designed those consent forms a long time ago, and these things are not in it. Do I need to update them now? Is that correct? And if so, because the very reason why it took me some time to develop them back then, 1 year ago, also for Word Package 3, is there was so much information in what I was getting from SmartDesk as a template from Barcelona, that the ethical committee immediately, the newly established ethical committee,
Yes.
said it's way too complex for our people to understand what you're saying with words as mitigating and stigmatization. You should make it simpler in normal language and stuff like that, rather than using these kind of words. And I did so. So,
And
do
then
I
it
need?
approved it. I mean, your ethics
Yeah,
committee.
they approved it, but these things are not in it. The associated risks, for instance, or risk of stigmatization, whatever.
If I may answer on that, I mean, I would consider separately the template for informed consent with the details on the procedure that we have to implement to avoid stigmatization and so forth. The second set of information will be included in the ethics deliverables and in the deliverable 4.1, which is the recollection of methodologies of the City Labs. Okay, but as for the informed consent templates, the only thing that I think is compulsory beyond, I mean, considering respect for privacy and so forth, is an explicit mention of the methodology. So for instance, in the case of Barcelona, the first version of the consent form refers to interviews. Okay, it will be part of an interview, and we will record the interview and so forth. In the new version, we will simply change the formulation of the technique to address the City Labs methodology. That's, I mean,
exactly, because I mean, when you talk about informed consent documents, I mean, don't forget that there is this, I mean, the information sheet where you explain to the participant which methodology he's about to be involved in. So, for example, a City Lab.
Yeah,
and
no, that's in it. That we say we will work in workshops, co-creating together. That's in there. But for instance, and that's what I'm a little bit concerned right now. Like any associated risk or risk of stigmatization and stuff like that. That's not explicitly mentioned in our information sheet. It's a Q&A kind of. So we have top 10 kind of questions that people can ask with the information, and I can change it. That's no problem. It's not in there yet. That's what I'm saying. But I understand, Ricardo. If I say what I will do, then at least I meet minimal requirements for this document. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say that as far as I remember, your template for the consent form was just fine. I mean, what I can do is to share it with Anna Maria. We will have a look at it and say if you need to introduce more changes, then explicitly mention the technique of data collection.
That's okay. Is that okay for you, Anna Maria? I call you Anna all the time, but it's Anna Maria now. Suddenly I understand. Sorry for that.
It's Anna Maria, actually.
Sorry.
No, but I accept also Anna. It's not a problem. But it's perfectly okay.
Okay. If you believe I need to add something, just let me know.
Okay, of course. Once I get your documents, I will. No problem.
I send it myself, Ricardo. Then we have direct contact.
Okay, thanks. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead.
Andrea is back. I don't know if you need to know something from him, or if not, we can just approach the end of the meeting.
Yes, for Andrea, basically what I said before, that, hi, Andrea, good afternoon.
Hi.
I would like to ask you if, I mean, I don't know if you were here when we said that with Ricardo, we will draft a revised ethics procurement plan that we will send to REA, where we will include our reply to the second ethics check. And since the second ethics check had raised issues on the Twitter study he had planned to do, and then you decided not to do it. I think that it would be very useful if you could send us, let's say, a short document where you explain why you decided not to do it and what you have decided to do, so the discourse analysis, and to explain how this discourse analysis will be done, and provide as many details as you can.
Okay, how short should it be, in the sense that I have a very long document, 3 pages long, where I explain the new discourse analysis, the way it's going to be conducted. So
Yes.
is it the
For
3
me-
pages? The 3 pages too much, or should I summarize it, or?
No, for me it's okay if you send them to us.
Okay,
we
so I
could,
should add a reason, an explanation for the LinkedIn. So, sorry, not LinkedIn,
for the
Twitter.
Yes.
For the Twitter, so why we are not going to do any Twitter analysis, and then I can send you also the document we prepare together with Paolo for the discourse analysis.
Exactly, and then
Okay.
with Riccardo, once we have that document, it could be that we add it as attachment
Okay.
to
Great.
the revised
Okay.
ethics procurement plan.
Okay. Okay.
I would also say that you do not need to justify why we are not doing Twitter, because the reason is
simply
that
explain it.
we have been asked to not to do it, so
Yes.
that's fine. I mean, one sentence.
Yeah,
Okay.
simply explain that in the end you have decided not to do it, and you
Okay.
have replaced it with.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guido is with his hand raised.
Yeah,
Yes,
just before the ending, one thing to consider as well from an ethical perspective. What we learned in Amsterdam so far is that the city labs and these co-creation sessions also raise, how do you say, expectations that we cannot fulfill in a way. And that's one of the things that we are actually considering and designing now in our communications. What kind of expectations can we raise?
Yes, and the issue of deception, I guess.
It's especially that, because the thing is, we can't do very much. We are researchers. We can facilitate these co-design sessions. We're working on policy and stuff like that, so we involve policymakers. But please, ladies and gentlemen, that's the main message that we need to say is, don't expect it to happen immediately just because we had this session by the policymakers. They have more. So I'm genuinely thinking about adding some disclaimers on expectations in there. We didn't discuss it so far, and it's more like maybe other case studies will have the same kind of issues. People expect too much.
I think it's a very significant issue, and also the issue exactly of deception. So I would say, I mean, now very basically, don't promise too much, don't raise too much the expectations of the research participants, because I mean, in the end, there is the risk that these people could really feel deceived. And as Guido said, the point is that even if there are interesting and smart ideas coming from the city labs, there is the risk that in the end they are not then implemented. So this should be made clear from the beginning.
Okay.
Thank you. Riccardo, if there aren't other questions, I think we could now close the meeting.
Yes,
Anna
just
Maria,
saying.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yes.
just two questions to Anna Maria. One, if you can share with us the presentation.
Yes, of course.
And second, if I can cut the part related to the training session and share it with partners as a recorded training session, if you agree on this.
Yes, but I have to do it, or you will do it?
I will do it, no problem.
Okay. And but then I mean, in any case, it would be already in the recording of the meeting, no?
Yes,
Yes,
but maybe there are some
separate.
partners, they are not interested in joining the whole meeting, but just the training part.
Okay. Yes, of
Okay?
course, no
Perfect.
problem.
Thanks.
And I will send you the slides, okay?
Great. Thanks.
You're
I will
welcome.
use them for the minutes.
Just saying that in 4 weeks or so, we should have a new meeting of the ethics committee. And maybe for the next time, if we manage to close the design of the City Lab, we should tailor the training to the specificities of the City Lab activities. And if so, I might ask by email to Erika to provide us with a few information so we can adjust the training.
Yes, and in the meantime, if partners want to send me, some documents about the City Labs that they are designing, I would be really happy to have a look at them, but also to understand better how these City Labs will be. No, obviously not to judge them, not at all, but simply to have a look to understand better and to see if I can provide any, let's say, input.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, I have 2 questions more. One for Riccardo. What do we know about the situation in the City Lab of Edinburgh and Ljubljana, right? They will have to do it as well, right?
Yes. Yes. Ljubljana told me that they are on summer break. I don't know why.
Spring break.
Spring break. Okay.
Yes.
So but they are working on it. I'm not sure that they are using the same participant as in Work Package 3 and so forth. So I might ask them directly. And Edinburgh is, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Okay, this is critical, I think. With both of them as soon as possible and try to collect this information. I don't know who can take care of that.
Well, as far as I know, we didn't receive anything yet, but we will soon contact the partners that has not sent anything or that missing something. So we will do it since we have to draft the methodology framework of the City Lab. So I hope we will receive answer from them too.
Okay, thanks. And then the second point was a suggestion for Erika. I would suggest we need this information as soon as possible. So I would say put a deadline, and a deadline that partners have to respect. Because, I mean, the way in which we're progressing is not very positive. So the situation is risky.
Yeah, we know, absolutely. Yeah, we are aware, and we plan to move faster on that. Yeah.
But also make clear the deadline to partners. So, okay, thanks.
Max, in the worst case scenario that we cannot do it by mid-June, so we should not alert the Commission, but just keep going in suspension mode.
Well, the point is, for sure, we will inform the project officer, for sure. The point is, in spite of the fact that in the review report is written that they specifically require that the reactivation is done when we have all these documents approved, I mean, the official approval of all the ethical documents, I'm not sure that we are obliged to comply with that requirement. Meaning, if we can reactivate the project, going on with the implementation of some task and catch up some of the delay until we get the official recognition, the official approval of all these documents. I think that this would be a better path.
But I
But
mean,
this is a-
we have just the city labs left, so without technical approval, we cannot do anything, I guess. I mean, yes, dissemination and stuff like this, but core research is just the city lab left. But let's not think to the worst case scenario.
The other way, no, wait, and then the second possibility is to, we have to submit also a reframe of the work plan with the deadline, the timeline, and everything. If you consider that, in spite of the City Lab being the main activity to be done, okay, we can say that some activities of the City Lab requiring this document will be a little bit postponed. That's the only way we can avoid or improve a little bit the situation.
So
We will discuss with Paolo if you want.
okay. Now, just Erika, if you anticipate any serious problem to this schedule, let us know and let's see how to solve it.
Because
Okay.
the problem here, just to make it clear, I mean, the problem here is that when we suggested to have the suspension, different partners highlighted their administrative economic problems to face this delay. If now we increase this delay, I don't know if partners have to face more critical situation. That's my concern. It's not a problem for us, for our university. I mean, it's not a big problem for our university. It's a problem, but we can solve it. I don't know the situation for other partners.
Okay, with this happiness in our hearts, I guess, let's say goodbye and see you in 4 weeks or so. I will send to you a doodle and let's set a new date, okay?
Okay.
Thanks a
Thank you
lot.
very much. Have a
Bye.
nice
Bye.
afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.